Hi, welcome to Nick's Games Review. I'm Nick, and today I'll be reviewing Nemesis by Awakened Realms. Have you ever seen the movie Alien and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could be on that ship where I could get torn apart by the perfect killing machine? If so, you're in luck. Nemesis captures that exact feeling. Although in Nemesis they're called intruders and not aliens to avoid any legal repercussions. So Nemesis is a 1 to 5 player semi-cooperative game where players are put through the ringer. Not only do you have to survive, but players can't trust each other due to hidden objectives. For example, one objective could read, "The ship must reach Earth," which is something typically all players want. Another objective could read, "Player 2 cannot survive." Sucks to be you if you're player 2. Keep in mind that in the beginning of the game, players are dealt 2 objectives, one that's inherently good and one that's more selfish. And you don't have to decide between the 2 objectives until the first intruder arrives. And that's when the game gets real spicy. Caliente. On top of that, 2 of the 3 engines must be working and the ship must be headed to Earth. Although some objectives conflict with a working ship heading to Earth, so you have to be wary of other players' intentions. Now let's talk about how Nemesis is played. The following is going to be a high-level explanation as there are a lot of rules. Let's go.
The goal of Nemesis is to stay alive, meet your objective, and not be infected by an intruder. The game consists of up to 15 rounds that are divided into 2 phases, the player phase and the event phase. First, set up the game according to the setup instructions in the rulebook. Player order is determined by drawing cards. Next, players are given 2 objectives, one personal and one corporate. After that, in player order, players decide between 2 characters. To fulfill their objectives, players need to explore rooms, check the engines, make sure the ship is headed to Earth, and keep the ship from exploding. Although you can try to hitch a ride in an escape pod if it does. Of course, if your chosen objective says otherwise, do what you must to meet that objective. The player phase has 3 steps. Technically 4 if you count repeating step 3 until all players have passed. Step 1. Draw up to 5 cards. Players start with a deck of 10 cards. Some of the cards are unique to each character, and some are shared by all characters, like the search and rest cards. Step 2. Move the first player token. Do this clockwise. Just remember that the first player token will stay with player 1 for the first round. Step 3. Perform actions. This is the bread and butter of the game. 1 at a time, in player order, players take up to 2 actions. Actions are performed by discarding the necessary amount of cards, which differs based on what the action is. If a player takes 0 or 1 action, they are then forced to pass for that round. When passing, the player may choose to keep the remaining cards in their hand or discard any number of them. There are several types of actions that can be taken. One is taking a basic action, which requires discarding 1 card. Basic actions are listed on the player boards and include movement, shoot, melee attack, pick up heavy object, trade, and craft item. There is also careful movement, but that requires discarding 2 cards. Movement moves you around the ship, but with each movement into a room that isn't occupied by either a player or an intruder, noise is created. To figure out where the noise is made, the moving player must roll the noise die. Whatever number comes up on the die, add a noise token to the respective corridor. This includes the technical corridors. Once a second noise marker is placed in any corridor, an intruder ambushes the player. This is the main way that intruders are introduced to the game. Just to note, in addition to numbers, there are also these 2 icons on the noise die. This one means silent and no noise will be added. This one means danger. If you roll danger, add noise to every corridor that doesn't already have noise. If all corridors have noise, do not add any additional noise. Shoot is the main way you'll be attacking intruders. Every player starts with a weapon and ammo for that weapon. Discard 1 ammo from the weapon and then roll the attack die. There are possibilities to miss, deal 1 damage, or deal 2 damage to intruders. Many of the weapons have special rules that modify how much or how likely a player is to hit an intruder. If you run out of ammo and don't have time to re-up, Melee is another way to attack intruders, but it is significantly weaker than shooting, as well as more dangerous for the player. First, you take a contamination card. That card alone could cause you to lose the game, though it is not an immediate loss and there is still a chance you could survive. Then, if you miss, you take a serious wound. If you have 3 serious wounds, your next wound, light or serious, is an instant death. Ouch. Regardless of what you roll, you can never do any more than 1 damage to an intruder. Imagine that you were trying to punch a giant alien, not likely to inflict much damage. The next basic action is to pick up a heavy object. There are 3 heavy objects in the game: Intruder Egg, Intruder Carcass, and Character Corpse. These are used to fulfill certain objectives and can be used to research for intruder weaknesses. Since you only have 2 hands, you can only hold 2 items and/or heavy objects. Trade is a basic action where, once initiated, all players in the room with the person taking the trade action can exchange items with each other. The craft item basic action allows you to craft a special item using items you already have. To determine if you have the right combination of items to craft a new item, look at the symbol in the top left corner of your items and consult the crafting menu. Finally, careful movement. This type of movement still generates noise, but instead of rolling the noise die, you get to choose where to place that noise. Other than basic actions, players can take actions from their player cards, items, or rooms they are in. To use a card action, discard the number of cards stated on the card you want to use in addition to the card itself. Some card actions require no additional cards to be discarded in order to use them. To use item actions, you may need to discard additional cards as well. Some items are one use only, so be mindful when you use them. Most rooms have unique room actions. There's a sheet that comes with the game that describes what each room action is, and how many cards you will need to discard in order to use it. For example, if you're in one of the engine rooms and you want to check to see if the engine is working, you will need to discard 2 cards. In the cockpit, you will need to discard 2 cards to use that room action of checking to see where the ship is headed. Then, if you want to change the coordinates of the ship, you will need to use the room action again and discard another 2 cards to do so. After everyone is passed, the player phase is concluded, and your crew moves on to the event phase. The event phase has 5 steps. Step 1 of the event phase is to move the time track 1 space. Once the track reaches this space, the ship jumps to hyperspace. If you're not in hibernation or in an escape pod by then, you're dead. And just to note, you can't hibernate until you reach this space of the time track. During this step, you also move the self-destruct track if it's been activated. If the self-destruct track reaches this space, the escape pods open and are available to use. If the self-destruct track reaches this space, the ship explodes and everyone on board dies, including the queen and the nest, which might be some players' objectives, so be wary out there. The next step of the event phase is Intruders Attack. If you're in a room with an intruder, you will be attacked. That is, unless there are multiple characters sharing a room with an intruder. Then, the player with the fewest cards in hand gets attacked. If tied, the player that acted closest to the current first player gets attacked. Next is fire damage. If a room is on fire and an intruder is in it, the intruder will take damage. Draw an intruder attack card to check its current health to see if it has enough damage to die. If the nest is on fire, remove an egg from it. If there are no more eggs on the nest, it is considered destroyed. Consult the rules for the other ways to destroy the nest. Some objectives are tied to the nest destruction. After assigning fire damage, resolve an event card. Move the intruders down the corresponding corridors and then follow the instructions on the card. The last step of the event phase is the intruder bag development. This increases the difficulty of the game by adding stronger intruders or forcing all players to roll for noise, triggering encounters. Now on to the ratings. Complexity, 5. There are so many moving parts and so much upkeep, it can be difficult to remember all of the systems. I'd recommend going into the first couple of games not expecting to win. Just play for fun's sake and it'll be a great time. Butthurt, 5. One player's objective could be to make sure that you don't survive. On top of that, the lack of trust could make other players act more selfishly and try to screw over other players before getting screwed over themselves. This could be a mean game, but that's not always the case and it doesn't have to be. It's important to remember that in order for anyone to stand a chance at survival, the crew needs to work together in some respect. Perhaps try to figure out early on who you can trust so at least you know you can count on someone else if needed. And if you're the player trying to bring another player to their doom, try not to get caught. Theme 5. In my opinion, this game is the king of theme. When it comes to theme, I will judge all other games against Nemesis. The miniatures are gorgeous. Yes, there are loads of miniatures. The rules and systems are all tied directly to the theme. For example, even if your objective is for another player not to survive, you can't outright kill them because the chip in your head won't allow you to do so. As such, you have to be sneaky and clever with how you get another player to die. Perhaps locking them in a room with a nasty intruder or leading them astray at every turn.
Nemesis isn't a game for everyone, but it's definitely a game for me. Sure, Sue just went to go check to make sure the engines are working, but she's acting real sketch. Maybe someone should go make sure she's not lying. Or maybe Brian intends for us to go to Mars. Better double check that as well. The games where it feels like everyone is working together only to be betrayed at the end is deliciously heartbreaking. I love Nemesis because every game has a unique, memorable story with high highs and low lows. And I can't wait to see how the next story unfolds. If you'd like to know more about me or my rating system, check out Nick's Reviews Explained. Or if you'd like to know about more of the games I love, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.